Welcome to the Develop Leadership Podcast, where we seek to explore the art and the science of developing your leadership capacity. Every month, we want to raise thought-provoking ideas and equip you to be an investor of the influence you carry. If you're ready to journey with us, then it's time to develop.
Welcome back, my fellow learners and leaders. This is Tony Villafane coming at you with another episode of the Develop Leadership Podcast. Well, today we are talking about a fun topic of learning from Gen Z. In an ever-evolving world, the perspectives and values of each generation play a crucial role in the shaping of our society. One generation that stands at the forefront of change and innovation is Generation Z, those roughly born between 1995 and 2010. This generation is often celebrated for its unique approach to social, environmental, technological issues, as well as their commitment to diversity and inclusion and social justice. We have a lot to glean from their young perspectives and passions. So, to gain a deeper understanding of the wisdom and insights Gen Z brings to the table, I have invited Becca Fries to the conversation. So, Becca, thank you for joining me today.
Hey.
So, Becca, would you be willing just to share a little bit about yourself and who you are for our listeners and viewers today?
Yeah, I am a freshman in college. I'm currently doing all my classes that I need to get done in order to do nursing school. I kind of feel like school is my entire personality right now because it's kicking my butt. I'm an EMT. God gave me a heart that has always loved to help people, so I get to work on the ambulance, and sometimes that entails seeing some really difficult things, but I have the privilege of serving communities around me, and I don't think I would want to have it any other way because I love what I do.
I love that.
I love plants. I admire their resilience, and if you were to ask me how many I had, you would think I was crazy. Yeah.
Dare I ask, how many?
I think I was pushing like 80.
80 plants?
Yeah.
Wow, that is a commitment right there. Love it.
I sing on the worship team here at Gateway Church, and I also get to help out organizing worship for kids. And one funny story that relates to what we're talking about today is that I would scroll through social media, and I used to think to myself, I was like, who is Gen Z? I thought it was like a specific person or a famous person, and I didn't realize it was a generation.
Like Jen, not Ge.
Yeah.
Oh, that's funny. Man, lo and behold, it's you. You are Gen Z. So crazy. Welcome. Glad you're here, and be willing to share just a couple snippets of who you are, and that's really, really neat. And actually, I'm excited to see how even some of the things you just said play into about what you do and who you are, how they play into some of these questions, and as we dialogue about your generation. Because again, as I said at the very beginning, Becca, there's a lot that we can learn. I'm a millennial. I'm 2 years away from the Gen Z cutoff, being born in 1993. And so sometimes I would say, yeah, I'm absolutely a millennial through and through. And then sometimes I'm like, I feel like I think like someone in Gen Z. And so these generations are they're man-made ideas and concepts that when these years are broken and stuff like that. But regardless, we can definitely see some themes, and we can definitely see some ideas coming out of each generation. So that being said, can you answer this question? What do you think are some of the significant differences between your generation and previous generation when it comes to values and beliefs?
When it comes to values and beliefs, I think the biggest differences between our generation compared to the previous one is diversity and individuality. And I think the more diverse our generation is, the more inclusive we're going to be. Our generation is different, and I don't think it's just life stage differences. There are generational divisions that were born out of changes in technology, in politics, in a culture that has been more connected, open, and accepting.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I think that phrase you say, like the more diverse we are, the more inclusionary we will
Inclusive.
be. Inclusive. We can make up a word here. But no, I think that is absolutely true, and diversity and inclusion, absolutely what I've seen. Mark, who is Gen Z, and so what about technology? Particularly social media, which obviously is a massive part, not just about Gen Z, but just it's part of our culture. It is literally who we are being in the digital age and the digital world. But Gen Z has literally been born into technology, born into social media. That's unique to Gen Z specifically. And so, how's technology influenced your generation's communication style and relationships, and what could older generations learn from the way Gen Z uses technology? Because I'm sure there's stuff that we can learn in that way.
Our relationships with one another, as well as how we express ourselves to others, have changed drastically, and social media on Gen Z has led to having different perspectives and ideas on how our life should look like, our bodies, and ourselves. Social media can have both positive and negative impacts.
For sure.
And positively, I would say it impacts self-expression and social connectivity, but that can also lead to unrealistic beauty standards and comparing ourselves to people we've never even met before.
Yeah, for sure.
And subconsciously, I think I might compare my body to other people, but I think the biggest thing I compare is other people's productiveness. I'm really guilty of watching everybody's day in the lives.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think the previous generations think that we're unable to pay attention to anything and we're unwilling to engage socially, and they're always like, oh, it's always because of your phone, or when I was your age. But I think we have to remember that previous generations grew up in a generation where they had very limited social media platforms, if any at all.
Yeah.
I don't think that they're at a higher risk than what my generation is at right now, but they are definitely still capable of struggling with the exact same things we do. Mm-hmm. We grew up with social media while learning and creating who we are as people, and we're not focusing on, do I feel good about who I really am as a person in the real world, rather than who we're pretending to be online. I think mental wellness is harmed by the need to be perfect, and it's really easy to lose touch of who you are in real life, because I think we're always posting who we want ourselves to be. Yeah. And I think there's at least a general growing awareness that we're more involved in our online person than who we are in real life. But I think that other generations could learn that social media allows for broadening perspectives, greater tolerance for differences, and more acceptance for mental health. Yeah.
Oh, that was a lot, and in a really compact and profound way to say that there's some of the couple of things that you had mentioned is that there, within the positivity of social media and technology, that there's this self-expression and social connectivity. That is so true. Whether it's even myself just scrolling on TikTok or on Instagram to see that there's a ton of people who are incredibly gifted to be able to put their talents up online. It's that's so neat to be able to watch and to see, and the social connectivity that we've had more than ever before, to be able to cross oceans even and be able to speak to people in that way, to in your own backyard, and being able to build communities in the digital space, while also to say that there is FOMO, and there is the need to look like you're perfect, and the need for comparison that happens on social media and technology way more easily than we would care to admit. For also you to say that there's that older generations can struggle just because they weren't born into this. They can still struggle with the same things that Gen Z does is really, honestly, Becca, I feel like if someone is not Gen Z and listening to this, they probably felt validated, because they're like, it's not just people, it's not just Gen Z who deals with this. As a millennial or as a boomer or as whatever, they can deal with those too, the same issues that teenagers deal with and young adults in our Gen Z. And then you touched on mental health, and my goodness, I'm sure we're gonna talk a little bit more about that for sure. How that plays directly into technology for sometimes better, but let's be real, many times for worse, unfortunately. And so a couple questions ago, you brought up diversity and inclusion. Could you speak a little bit more into that and how you see this generation's perspective on diversity? And again, we're learning from you. So what can older generations do better in understanding and supporting the efforts of diversity and inclusion that Gen Z is passionate?
Yeah. Diversity and inclusion are driving principles for my generation. And I think that topics that previously have not gotten any attention are finally getting the attention that they deserved all along. And this is a big change, and I think a lot of people are just not used to it, or they're not ready for it because it's uncomfortable. My pastor Scott once did a sermon here regarding how the world sees us Christians, and this phrase has stuck with me ever since. He said, "We scream unity as a means of demanding uniformity instead of celebrating diversity." So Jesus prays that we would all be one. And the only way to really become one is to engage in healthy discussions on topics that we disagree on. But we can't honestly think that people who don't believe in Jesus would even want to come into the family of God if we're more divisive than the rest of the world. So how we dialogue in today's culture is just as important as why, and I think we should all be intentional about how we go about it. So we have a Jesus whose love for us is endless, and he gave his love freely, withholding nothing. He laid down his perfect life so we could live. Jesus didn't love in order to get something from us, but to give everything of himself to us. And if you're familiar with Philippians, Paul goes on in Philippians 2, and he talks about how Jesus set aside his privileges of his divine status. He emptied himself of his outward glory by reducing himself to the form of a lowly servant. So if Jesus is showing us the Father, then the way of the kingdom is humility and surrender. And if that's how Jesus prayed, then I think our prayer should be the same. Jesus would still love the ones that are being disciplined and beat down with scriptures being used out of context. He would show love to the person that was racially profiled and stripped of their dignity and character because someone looked down on them because of the color of their skin or the country they came from. He would wipe away the tears of someone who was rebuked and belittled because they are confused about their identity. There becomes an issue when we are minimizing the pain of others and opinions are becoming more important than other people's humanity. This really good quote I found, Dante Stort says this: "If Jesus stood with and protected the marginalized, then why do so many Christians stand with and protect the powerful?"
Wow. That's really good. I am not going to put Dante on the same level as Jesus, yet that is that's a very powerful quote. Can you read that one more time, actually?
Yeah. If Jesus stood with and protected the marginalized, then why do so many Christians stand with and protect the powerful?
And there's something bubbling up probably in some people right now that are listening to this, and they're like, why? Because and we live in such a broken world. And we live in such a fractured world. And again, you said it yourself, that unfortunately there is more divisiveness in Christianity than anywhere else. And that's not something that I'm proud of. I know that's not something you're proud of. And that's why we want to have conversations like this to be able to bring things to the table and bringing things to the light. And we don't want to scream uniformity. We want to scream unity. And yet you are right to say, as Pastor Scott had mentioned, that we accidentally say unity when we're really trying to make uniformity. Be like me, and only like me, or the people that I support and am around. And so to be able to say that Gen Z values diversity and inclusion is, I can see that firsthand over and over again, and it's really unique to see how they, how you are willing to step into those conversations and those spaces, and to know that Jesus, you are absolutely right. Jesus did do so many of those things. everything you just said. He did all those things, and I think that we need to continue to take notes from Jesus on how we pursue diversity and inclusion, and we need to take notes from Gen Z on how now you'll be the first to say Gen Z doesn't do it all right, obviously, and yet there is a lot that you guys are doing right, and so it's really good stuff to think through. Talk to me about mental health. Mental health awareness seems to be a prominent topic within Gen Z. What are some of the insights or coping strategies that you and your peers have developed for dealing with stress and mental health challenges? And then how can older generations benefit from these insights?
Yeah. This kind of goes back to social media, but I think social media has connected Gen Z with other people's stories. So when someone's vulnerable or open on the internet, it makes it easier for others to talk about their struggles too. So previous generations belonged to a generation where talking about mental health or asking for help was wrong or unheard of. And I think some of it has to do with how the church has dealt with the topic around mental health, unfortunately. But getting help has been getting promoted, and we've been more exposed to it.
For sure.
We are more open to discussing our mental health than generations before. We are also the first generation to grow up with the internet and social media being readily available ever since we were born. We're more comfortable sharing our personal stories online, and we can access so many other resources. I think mental health awareness stems from social media in a way. As we speak more openly about our mental health, we are also prioritizing and recognizing the importance of mental wellness. And I think a lot of our insights boil down to, like, it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to not be okay, it's okay to cry, it's okay for men to cry, you know? I think a lot of the coping strategies that I see my generation get involved in is fitness or eating styles, because the better we eat, the better we feel. I definitely struggle with seasonal depression because the time changed and it was just like, but there's something called a hot girl walk where you just go on a cute little walk and it's supposed to make you feel better.
Hot girl walk.
I do that. I like doing that with like a cute little coffee or something.
Yeah.
But then also retail therapy. I know it's not, my bank account's screaming right now. I think we're all guilty of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that one thing that social media has done an incredible job with is bringing to light mental health issues and trying to normalize them. And I think that's a massive perk to social media in general. And just really grateful for, in my own way, I'm grateful for, like, whether it's my own mental health stuff that I have to deal with, to physical health stuff. Like, my wife deals with physical health stuff that I've been more educated because of things that pop up on social media. And so I think that there's some uniqueness to the way that technology and social media can benefit and aid our mental health journey, while also we very well know it can deter mental health very, very quickly, as we've already slightly alluded to. But those are, again, really good conversations to be able to have and to address. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, and asking if you can speak into this, is that Gen Z is known for their creativity, their ability to think outside of the box. And can you talk about that and how older generations can encourage creativity in young people rather than maybe trying to stifle it? So encouraging over stifling.
All right, I did a little bit of research on this because I wasn't quite sure, but I think that Gen Z is more creatively inspired by our loved ones, whether that's our family or friends. This means that one of the major ways that generations above us can encourage creativity in us is through authentic relationships. But I think, on the other hand, we need to be able to learn and think and solve problems in creative ways where we have the freedom to make mistakes and have our ideas respected. We can't learn if we can't fail. So in order to do something creative or solve a problem, we need to be able to see a variety of different perspectives and to generate several solutions.
Wow. That's really rich to be able to say there is a need for authentic relationships. Like, Gen Z craves that authenticity. And so to say, if someone that's not Gen Z wants to say, hey, how do I spark creativity in someone who is a Gen Zer? Be authentic with them, because that authenticity will breed authenticity. And so I think that's super profound to say, while also to say there needs to be a space for ideas to be expressed and freedom to fail. That sounds incredible. It's easier said than done. We know this, but it's very true. It is absolutely true that there needs to be a space for ideas to be voiced, ideas to flop, and voice to be respected. That's really good, Becca. That we need to hear that, because there is a lot that Gen Z can bring to the table in creativity and be able to think outside the box. But if your voice isn't heard, it doesn't matter. So we need that space for that voice to be heard. So thank you for speaking into that. What would you say about advice that you would give to parents, to teachers, employers who better want to understand and connect with Gen Z, and how can they bridge the generational gap and foster productive relationships in the name of that authenticity piece that you just said?
Some advice that I think that would help us understand and connect with us would just to be more open. That means acknowledging our backgrounds and our beliefs and where we came from. Not criticizing everything that we do, because I notice a lot of the previous generations do that and say like all these things about us. I found this quote. I don't know who said it, and it might sound harsh, but it says, "Those who criticize this generation forgot who raised it."
Those who criticized this generation forgot who raised it. Which also, that can go both ways.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm being raised by my parents' generation, and if I'm criticizing, I'm forgetting. If I'm forgetting, I'm usually criticizing, and so that can go both ways, from younger to an older generation, for sure. So that's a neat insight, whoever that quote would be attributed towards, to say there's some wisdom in that, on how we learning from the generations before us, and after us. 100%. How about the future of work and education? How do you see work and education evolving based on the preferences and values of Gen Z? We're not talking about coddling per se, but we're talking about there are values and there are preferences. So what lessons can older generations learn and take from the changes that are evolving?
Education-wise, down the road, I can sadly see more remote work from home. Violence is something that we have to deal with in this world, and I wouldn't be surprised if down the road everyone went virtual for school, which can affect a lot of things.
Oh, for sure.
There's also a lot of controversy around schools educating and talking about subjects like LGBTQ+ and other social issues. But I have noticed that my generation is pursuing things outside of the education system, because there are so many more opportunities out there other than just school.
Yeah.
So with my generation entering the workforce, or some of us already have, we need to start looking at how work itself is changing. We have different preferences and behaviors than previous generations, but we do have the ability to create a greater personalization in how we move along in our career journeys. And I think that the workforce needs to be ready to develop a new mindset. I think we have a different perspective on careers and how we are defining success in life and work. And I think especially after COVID, we value time more than our money.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
I can see that for sure.
Yeah.
Time being more valued than money. And some of the conversations after COVID within Gen Z, the mindset and perspectives that are shifting in young adults who are entering into the workforce. I think that there's a need for, again, whatever generation it is that is employing someone who is Gen Z age, to have those real conversations, asking, hey, what do you value? How are you motivated? What brings your very best to the table? And I feel like those are questions that you can ask any employee, but like even more in particular, someone who's Gen Z, that there is, and the cultural landscape changed dramatically with COVID. I completely agree that more and more things are becoming online, and more convictions and preferences are changing because of that. And that's every generation, but Gen Z, that were the youngest, that kind of really lived through that in the teenage years. And so to be able to have those conversations in work and in education to seek to understand someone's perspective, a Gen Zer's perspective, would be so super needed. And to be willing, again, there's certain things that we need to hold as conviction, and we need to be willing to not deviate from certain things that we would hold to be true biblically, or that we would be true to hold morally, so on and so forth. But to be able to say, look, we have a flexibility to speak into these conversations and the evolving times that we're in is greatly needed. And I think that social justice is specifically one of those that Gen Z has been able to speak into. It has been able to bang the drum a little bit, or a lot of it, on this one. And so can you maybe share any experiences or initiatives related to activism and advocacy that you or your peers have been involved in? What can older generations learn from the commitment to causes of social justice specifically?
Yeah, I think especially with everything that happened during COVID with the Black Lives Matter movement and racism against Asians, I think social justice, like the passion around that, has definitely increased. I'm really passionate about social justice, and I'm still continually educating myself on it, but that doesn't mean I have all the right answers. But I know that racism is rooted in a sense of racial superiority, which makes people assume that they have the right to control or abuse someone else. And if we're being honest, that can be found in all of us.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if we're silently feeling like we're superior based on our race or our nationality or our culture or our personal pride. But I think it's important for us to know that there is so much more to social justice than just racism. We are a generation that fights for everyone's rights and equality. And I noticed that a lot of us are skeptical of participating in social justice because of this deep-rooted fear of being labeled as liberal or a progressive Christian.
Yeah, wow.
And they don't want to be associated with these secular movements. But I think it is important for all of us to know, not just the older generations, that we need to be uncomfortable stepping up into these issues that go beyond our cultural comfort zones, because Jesus did.
Yeah.
He cared deeply about social causes around him. Jesus went out of his way intentionally to help specific groups of people, the alienated, the mistreated, and those facing injustice. Yep. We need to have compassion, and compassion is motivated by empathy, which generates a behavior that sees life from the other person's point of view. Jesus' mission is caught in a single vision with two components. His hope for a restored humanity envisions well-being for people who are spiritually poor and people who are socially poor. Jesus teaches us to love is to be just. To be just is to love. And when we claim to follow Jesus, we are disciples of justice. So Jesus' mission on earth in his time is our mission on earth, our time. We recognize Jesus as the divine Son of God. And at the same time, we celebrate his humanity as an expression of how we are living our lives. But I think many of us either emphasize Jesus' divinity and tend to limit the importance of his humanity, or those who appreciate Jesus' humanity tend to downplay his divinity. So when we look at how Jesus treats the lepers or the women or the children, we can understand how God views the marginalized. Jesus is showing us how to live and how to love. And one of my quotes that happens to fit into what we're talking about is from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice, and justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. So everyone is created in the image of God and loved by God. So we are responsible for identifying with the victimized and the marginalized, not just rejecting their existence.
Oh. Wow. You are dropping some truth bombs there as you share that. My goodness, Becca, I love that, because to say that, the pursuit of social justice, can that seem as a more quote-unquote liberal or progressive Christian thing? Can it actually be at times? Yeah. But is it sometimes misunderstood? Yeah. And so to be able to say that Jesus, I love that thought about Jesus's vision being caught up in those two statements to restore people spiritually and in their humanity as well, and that Jesus teaches us to love is to be just. That's rich. And that's really, really neat. And to say that as Jesus followers, we are disciples of justice. I don't know if that's a way that I've ever explicitly put it before within my own framework as thinking myself as a Christian, and yet you are absolutely right. And so I think that's really, really, I think that's a neat call to action to say, if you call yourself a Jesus follower, there is a call to love, which means there's a call to be just, and a call to justice as a disciple maker. I think that we need to take a few more notes from Gen Z and how they think through these particular conversations. And your idea about compassion being motivated by empathy is so true. The empathy with the ability to see the other person's world and to step into it and to know it and let your heart be broken over that is so needed. That drives us to compassion, which compassion drives us to action, as we know. And it's fun to watch Gen Z try to take action over some of these things in the realm of social justice. Okay, so you know me. I'm a leadership guy. I love being able to talk leadership lessons in anytime I get the chance. So I know that there's some leadership lessons that we can learn from Gen Z, but there's some things that Gen Z can learn from other generations. So that being said, what leadership lessons have you learned? You're not necessarily speaking on behalf of a whole generation. You're speaking about you. Like, what have you learned from the generations above you?
I was looking through this when you sent me the questions, and I was like, oh, I like that question, because pride will get us nowhere, and there's always something to learn. And I think one of the things I admire about the generations above me is their work ethic. But if we're taking a different turn or a different perspective, I've noticed that family is a higher priority, and I think generations above us are more family focused. Because the way that I noticed that my generation is so focused on wanting to get away from their family, whether that's because of trauma or stuff, and they're so focused on the inner child stuff of, I want to create a family where what happened doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think that leadership lesson of work ethic is huge, because I greatly respect and look up to the work ethic of my parents and the way that what I've learned from them. I would say that the work ethic I have today is largely attributed to what I saw and witnessed in them, and so I think that's a great one, along with being the family focusedness is really good, and knowing that there's a positive side of the mental health of like learning about your inner child and learning about the trauma. There's a positive side to that, but there also can be a negative side of like we are just dismissing family altogether. And so to say no, I want to learn from my family, and I want to be with my family, even if it's like dysfunction. We've covered a lot of ground asking about Gen Z and what can we learn from them. And as we begin to land the plane of this conversation, what final words of insight or advice, caution maybe, would you give to our listeners in this conversation?
Yeah, when I was first working on this, I just thought to myself, like, I don't know when loving one another has become political. And I would just say
that again.
Don't make loving each other political. And if we're truly who we claim to be, it will flow down in everything we do and everything around us. But with that being said, I think it's important to say that Gen Z isn't doing everything right, and I think we need to be kept accountable to our actions, our moral compass, and staying true biblically. So, yeah.
Those are synthesized and profound words to be able to end our time together. Becca, it's so much fun to as your former youth pastor to be able to sit across from you and process this dialogue and conversation, to see that you are a Gen Zer who is trying to live these things out biblically, trying to live it out authentically, trying to live it out in a way that is true to you and who God's made you to be, while also trying to, again, learn from others and learn that I don't have it all together, and so on and so forth. I know that you're the first to say I don't have it all together, and yet I love being able to be able to pick your brain on this conversation, and so thank you for your willingness, thank you for your vulnerability, thank you for you. Just thanks for being willing to step into this conversation with me. And I know that, again, you're not speaking on behalf of a whole generation. You are speaking on behalf of you, who is Gen Z. And so I would absolutely encourage our listeners, if you are looking to learn more from Gen Z, go talk to more of them. They're out there. Anyone basically 12 to 27 years old, really 28 years old, those are Gen Zers right now, and in 2023. And so go learn from them, go ask them questions, and then also there's other resources, like there's an organization called Axis, AXIS. They do a phenomenal job on trying to understand the mind of Gen Z and translating their culture. And so if you go to axis.org, they have some phenomenal free resources for you on trying to understand the culture of our times. And so that's one I would heavily recommend. And so once again, Becca, thank you. Thank you for being with me today. Thank you for being processing this conversation. It's a delight to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It is my utmost pleasure and delight, friend. And if you are enjoying what you're listening to, you are liking what you are hearing, would you be willing to give us a rating, hit the share button wherever you consume the content? And we hope that you will join us next time as we continue to explore the art and science of building influential capacity. Catch you next time.